Good afternoon, and welcome to the COVID Resilience live event. My name is Justin Yu, and today I will be your host. This event is made up of IDEA graduates at LCC, and I will be joined by other students from my course in the same year, and this is part of the online graduate show. Just a little bit of admin to begin with is that any views shared or expressed during this event doesn't actually reflect the views and opinions of UAL as a whole, but only select individuals here that are talking today. The overall event will be discussing what it's like to be a third year during the whole COVID happenings that's been happening over the past few months. And so, without further ado, let's get straight into it.
IDA, man.
For me, personally, interaction design arts is about doing something that I didn't know I could actually do.
There's really nothing that can beat the IDA environment.
A place where I'm challenged and where I have the most freedom to play and to challenge myself.
You get to try out everything. We have no restrictions.
The sole premise of IDA is experience. You want to experience something.
The idea is actually above the technology.
There is simply no real limit to what you could do within this course.
Conglomerate of so many different people and so many different mediums.
IDA is just sort of like a big family that, you know, we may only see each other once a week, once a month, and maybe once a year, but we still sort of fit together and not at all at the same time.
So I shall be introducing my guests now. Here we have Claudia, we have Jesse, and we have B. But I shall be referring to them by their nicknames. Well, I just called B by a nickname, but we have Foggy, Mary Poppins, and B. How are you all today?
I'm great, thank you.
Great.
So, as you can see by the beginning,
Really emotional.
Very emotional. I'm sorry. I worked hard on trying to make it not too emotional, but unfortunately, I lied. So let's talk about IDA as a whole. IDA, what's IDA, guys? I'm gonna start with Jesse. Start with Mary Poppins. What do you think IDA is?
Oh, it's a hard question to answer, really, because it's just everything. I mean, the last 3 years has been incredible, and I've met some really amazing people and made some really amazing friends. And it's just, I mean, you heard my voice clip before. We're a massive family, and I couldn't be more heartbroken to be leaving you all.
I mean, Foggy, what if not? Okay, I've definitely asked you this question before, but for those who aren't aware, can you describe what IDA is? Good luck.
IDEA stands for Interaction Design Arts, and it's a course which self-defines as media agnostic, which essentially is another way of saying that it's interdisciplinary and very much focused on the individual dreams, passions, and fears of the students themselves. And we're very much pushed into those kind of areas between what we love and like to do and what we would love to do, and also are very fearful. So IDA is almost like a womb where everything comes together, and we're allowed to experiment, we're allowed to interact with people just like you and Mary Poppins, believe we do is because we can when we're together. That's what I think, anyway.
Okay, so hopefully we got that across. So, B. So
Yes.
So Foggy just mentioned that it was very media agnostic, and I think you're probably one of the best ones to talk to about this, since you're predominantly a design course, but you're a painter.
Yes.
What's it like being, or like being so like different in terms of media?
My world, well, but it's a course where you really can get to know yourself so much better because you are confronted with so many new media that I'd never dreamed of that I would work with. But on the long haul, this can like expand my practice so much further from having that experience to see how my creativity can work in a completely different state. So, I mean, I've learned so much from these last 3 years, also from working independently and not to be afraid of making mistakes because you haven't tried this before. So how can it be perfect ever? But you learn so much more from that.
I mean, I know for a fact that
input from everyone who are from different fields. So it's a massive hub of a community and like supporting each other and helping each other out with what we're good at. So
it's great because I know for a fact that you since you do painting, but you work very hard on a very personal film about your time in Tokyo.
Yes, that's correct.
It's amazing to see what kind of places people move on to from just from being experienced, being exposed to different types of media, right? I predominantly work with sound now, but when I started, I was working with sculpture. I was working with performance.
Yeah.
Things change as you get exposed to so many different things.
Yeah, you get interested of how this actually fits together and to make it work by yourself. And when you face a challenge, like you can also resolve it, which this Corona period has shown a lot of.
Oh yeah, but we're definitely moving on to that in a moment.
Yeah.
But I just want to clarify that the reason we're talking about IDA right now is because IDA is such a big part of who we are and what we do.
Yeah.
Especially since being an IDA, we spend a lot of time in the studios interacting with other students. And well, you can't exactly have that when you're in lockdown or you're quarantining yourself. So, it's been tough, but I'm just trying to get across how much, IDA really is a big part of our lives, right? So speaking of Foggy.
Yes.
What do you say is your favorite part about IDA?
I have to say that my favorite part about IDA is, and unfortunately was kind of taken away a little bit by this whole quarantine situation. It's the studio. So we kind of exist in a very kind of, I don't know, specific set of rooms. And my experience coming from a different course, because I initially started my degree as an illustration student, an IVM student from LCC. And, as I met Celine Wolfart, which is an IDA graduate, I really discovered what it was to feel nurtured, not just by the students that actually go to the studio and actually interact with each other, but also having our tutors and lecturers within the same space. So we kind of cohabited. There was a clean space, as we called it, where you'd work on your laptops or your Macs, and you'd get all the prototyping or the research done, and then you have your dirty studio where you would construct unbelievable things, and it would always be covered in paint and wood and all these things. But you also had this office, which was like this safe haven. And you'd knock on that door and you knew that you'd always have at least one person willing and available for you, not just on the sense of product development or research or execution of any given project, but also to kind of support you emotionally and mentally during any of the trying and testing times that you go through as a student. There's an unbelievable amount of stress that we go through during our third year. And I think that what we've learned from them as people is almost equally as valuable as what they have given us as tutors and professionals of their field, really. And that is what I miss the most. Although I would like to mention the fact that more than any other course that I have any knowledge of, IDA was able to regroup on the internet, which I never imagined this could happen. Biggles, I'm sure he will be listening to this, and big thank you to you, because you created a digital server, a space where we could actually interact in a very strangely spatial way. So we all had our kind of desktops and our kind of convergence rooms. We could really have a sense of what we used to have, of those meeting spaces, but it became something else because they were hosted on a server. So I would say that that's my favorite part of IDA. That, and just generally knowing that there's no limit of what you can do if you just approach things without fear.
Okay. Go Biggles indeed. Right, this next one's directed at Mary Poppins.
Hi.
So, I know that you worked on a magazine for your for your exhibition, for your final hand-in. That's something that's, would you say that's something that you would have done had you not gone to IDA? Like the approach that you took towards it?
Oh God, no, absolutely not. I started this course believing that I wanted to be a painter like B, and I potentially thought myself a little bit of an illustrator, but now that I look back on it, I just, I have learned so much from this course, as we all have. And the main thing I've learned is that I don't have to limit myself to one thing. And with my final projects, I did quite a few for my major project. All of them are different. And although I may have used InDesign for a lot of them, I may have used cameras for a lot of them, they're all completely different. But my magazine was never something that I intended on doing. I kind of expected to possibly do a book, but the magazine is just sort of came out of nowhere.
I mean, it was very spur of the moment. It kind of, the inspiration hit you. And I think one thing that I found that we learn in IDA is that it's a different way of thinking, right? It's an idea can come out of anywhere, and it's something you want to achieve. But what we learn in IDA is there are many different ways to achieve that, and there's sometimes the simplest answer can be the best answer, and that just kind of manifests in all sorts of different ways for different people. Yeah. But okay, so I'm going to quickly jump back to something that Foggy talked about, which was being able to build a community again online, right? So, all three of these of my friends here have, in fact, interacted with me online whilst during this period, and that's because I was conducting a series of interviews with a couple of the other students. All the audio you heard before this segment was from those interviews. And one thing I like to do during these interviews is to throw a curveball at people. Very spur of the moment, I like to say, okay, here's what we're going to be talking about, yada yada yada. We'll talk about this, we'll talk about that, and then halfway in the middle, I ask them, So, would you care to share what you think? Could you describe IDEA in 2 words?
Justin.
So, I have a little clip for everyone. I have a little clip for everyone concerning the what exactly transpired during that. So, without further ado, I shall be moving on to that.
Oh my god, you're crazy. 2 words?
IDA into 2 words.
Oh my, it's very difficult.
Oh god, this is really hard.
Unexpectation or unexpected. And the other one, I'm gonna sound so cheesy, so please don't judge me. Love.
I would say own interpretation.
Versatile and, I don't know, annoying.
Witty and intelligent.
Let's say it's a creative mixture.
I say maybe like weird nostalgia.
Incredible mess.
Can I say 3?
Go on, say 3.
Free, community, and research. And I think they're definitely the key thoughts that came up into my head when you mentioned that.
Okay, so that was a lot of fun. I can tell you right now, that was a lot of fun to edit. That was a lot of fun to see everyone's reactions, since we were doing a video call and everyone would stop and be like, I'm sorry?
You can't do that.
I can do that, and I have the power to do that. Well, it was certainly very fun, except one thing I noticed when going back to edit this was that I forgot to ask B for her 2 questions.
Yeah.
So B, if you had to describe IDEA in 2 words, what would they be?
I would say opportunities and yeah, community.
Opportunities and community. So I get community. What do you say? Why opportunities?
It's a chance for you to really dig into your mind and see what you can. I mean, really challenge yourself. And I think challenges bring a lot of opportunities that you can really experiment and try out new things.
Yeah. Right. So I think we're going to move on to talking exactly about COVID, how exactly it affected all of us, and I'm going to start with B. So COVID started happening, and then the Easter break happened, and then we couldn't go back to university. So
no.
What exactly happened for you, right?
I was in my warehouse in Hackney Wick with my housemates, and we also had to figure out how to live together 24/7 and work around each other. But I'm glad I have my space here in my room to work in still, even though it's limited. You have to find new ways of creating what you want to create.
Because I know that you were very unfamiliar with film at the time, so you didn't have access to other students who are much better at or much more experienced with the editing software, as well as workshops and tutors to give guidance. It's not as hard. It's not as easy to just to message them online as it is just to go to the office, knock on the door, like, hey, can you help me?
Yeah, I need help with that, and
I need help, right?
Fix it. Yeah,
it's not the same. It's a lot harder.
No, and you learn so much more from. You have to type in on Google and type in the right question of what your issue is, and like Google is and YouTube is suddenly your new friend.
It's certainly a harder process to keep yourself motivated during that, though.
Yeah.
Like if you have someone teaching you next to you, right? Maybe you won't learn as quickly, or maybe you will learn more quickly. Some people learn differently, but the motivation starts going down if for every single thing that you get stuck on, you have to, go on Google, type out like, how do I find where my sequences are in Premiere or After Effects, and then next thing you know, it's been an hour and you're still Googling answers, right?
I think I've got a lot closer with my housemates, and we have worked side by side. Me and my housemate Tom, he worked in the studio just above me. So we had created this workspace for both of us, and I knew he's doing his thing. We're creating a schedule, and that kind of motivates you because you are in the same flow as the other person. So that community that we have lost a bit from not have access to the university, I try to recreate that in a sense with friends around you, and make it work from there, and give each other inputs. And I would share what I'm doing with him and them, and so did he. So you create a new motivation.
So this kind of different community never would have happened had COVID not happened.
Yeah.
So what would you say the hardest part about having to be in your studio in Hackney, other than being in the studio, our studios itself, right?
I mean, yeah, there were things that I want to redo or get better. As further I got in the project, I could see, okay, if I just had that studio, I could have made it a lot better or differently, or try out even more things. But that could be a bit frustrating because it would take a lot of labor to do the other things I was gonna do, like a lot of After Effects work. Could have made it a lot easier for me if I had other ways. But in that sense, I mean, I've learned so much from this experience than I would normally. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think we all learned a lot from having to work differently. But the big things that we had to work differently, right? So did you find that your final results ended up being the same as they would have been if we had access to the studios?
I'm sure they would have been different, but nonetheless, I'm very proud of the result and very happy with what came out of it. Also because of the process that I had to find the answers for my question myself, or like search for it on the internet, because the digital space would have limited, like they wouldn't reply your emails straight away. So you kind of need to dig in on your own. But that's how the real world is as well.
That's fair enough.
And yeah.
That's yeah, you're right. That's just how the real world
dig
works.
into it.
To dig into it, you have to start adapting.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we're gonna move on to Mary Poppins.
Hi, sorry.
No worries. So what exactly was your living situation during the whole COVID, when we couldn't go into studios anymore?
So I ended up having to give up my flat in London, and I moved down with my partner to Somerset, to their family home. And that's where I was for the harsher parts of lockdown. I'm now currently residing in my parents' home in Ireland, but for the tougher bits, I was in Somerset.
Right. So how did you? So you moved. Okay. So you moved and stayed with your partner for a while. How do you find that really affected your work? Since now you're designing a zine. Do you really know you're doing a zine at that point?
I think at that point I decided that it was going to be a magazine, because I originally was just going to do a collection of photo shoots. And then I realized that I wasn't going to be able to go into the studio and do any more shoots. And I had like all these people that I'd asked to model for me, and I couldn't see them because for obvious reasons. And I was now in another part of the country. So I had to ask people if they had portraits of themselves, and I asked them questions over email and through Google Documents, which is the best thing that I could have done, because I made this, want to say amazing. I don't like to, you know, what's the word, like toot my own horn, but I feel like I have made something amazing, and not because I've made it, but because I've done something that has given people who wouldn't usually be given a voice to speak out and tell their stories. And I think that being in a different part of the country and being so far away from everyone that I knew, it gave me the opportunity to do that and talk to people in a different way.
I mean, I think you achieved that as well. I think it's good to be proud of your work, right? Not like overly proud to the point where, oh, it's perfect, there's nothing to be improved, anyone else says otherwise is wrong, right? Like, you can be proud of your work, you know, and well, I think you know, I've gone through everyone's showcase. All of your work really shows, you know, that, you know, kind of a journey throughout this entire year, and sometimes even before that as well. But since you kind of had to work around not being able to do photo shoots for essentially a very photo-centric medium, right? That sounds really tough. Did you ever have like issues because it was over the internet, like having to kind of grab people like, hey, interview right now, or something like that?
I mean, there were a few people that didn't quite get to be featured because they either couldn't reply to me fast enough, or they didn't have the right sort of images and content to be put in the magazine. Because as much as it's about people and who they are, you kind of want something that is, I don't want to say high fashion, but sort of has that fashionable look to it. And you kind of don't want like selfies. Like, you want a proper portrait. You want someone to be like looking good. And I mean, everyone looks great. Yeah. I mean, it was hard because everyone was struggling so much to sort of figure out what they were going to do with their lives. And then there was me emailing them being like, please, can you reply to my questions? I'm sorry to annoy you, but please. So I suppose it was hard trying to gather everyone at the same time as doing everything else that I was trying to do, and dealing with the fact that I wasn't seeing my family, and I was put in a situation that I didn't really want to be in. I had to leave my course and all my friends and my flat, and yeah, so.
It sounds very alienating, like being thrown into a different location but still expected to do the same.
Yeah, definitely. I have to say that I probably wouldn't have been able to get through it without Biggles. He's just amazing. He's been like my therapist for the last 3 years, not by his choice, but he's an incredible support, not only to me, but to everybody else. And I would wholeheartedly love to thank him. And if I could, I'd give him a big hug, but I can't.
Well, I'm going to add on to that. I'm going to thank Joel, since he's put up with me for 5 years. He's been my personal tutor for 5 years. Somehow I graduated this year, but he's seen me at my worst. He's seen me at my slightly less worse. It's been a rocky road, and I think our tutors themselves are not only amazing people, they're very patient with us.
Oh my God, yes.
Like, let's quickly talk about starting times for class, right?
Oh my God.
10:30 for the beginning of the term. For the beginning, it's 10:30. And then next thing you know, next week it's people didn't come in, so it's 10:40. And next thing you know, it's, hey guys, we start at 11, and then they actually start at 11:30 because no one's in.
We're looking at you, Justin. What are you talking about? You're
hey,
the one
you
that's
can't be
not
late if
coming.
you're never in, right? I'm an awful student.
Oh God.
I mean, this is something that happens every single year because I've done the year 3 times now. And every single year this happened. It's, you know, it's great. It's a cycle that always repeats. And unfortunately, it's probably going to keep going for the next few years. But anyway, moving on. So Foggy, the fish girl.
Oh, great. That's an awesome nickname. Another one.
Yes. So Yes, 2 days ago you had your live event, and you demonstrated how you were using a fish to print, right?
Yes. So I did my printing.
So printing with a fish. How on earth did that
Just
come
waiting
about?
for the lag to move out.
Well, yeah. So it was essentially, for anyone there, she was showing off the process where she, inked up a fish and then carefully managed to get a monoprint of it, which again, super interesting. But one thing I'm really curious about is, did this idea come before COVID or as a result of, I have no printing facilities. What can I do?
Well, it's a bit of both, Justin. So the reality is that as a printmaker, I've always been fascinated by this technique, which, by the way, it's called gyotaku. Gyo means fish in Japanese, and taku means graphic or to rub, and therefore you have the essence of what a gyotaku print is. And I've always wanted to try it out. I've always had a lot of respect for Japanese printing culture, and I've always really wanted to kind of explore that more and learn. And COVID presented me with an opportunity to fail as much as I wanted in the isolation of my own room. I mean, you wouldn't bring a fish to school, right?
Well, I've seen weirder.
Yeah, I know that, we're art students, we're a bit funky in that, but I have a great deal of respect for the people and the workshops at LCC. And I know that all you need to do is ask, but for some reason I felt a bit inhibited, and I was doing crazy stuff still. Like my project up until quarantine was thinking outside the printmaking box anyway, but it felt more PC than bringing in a fish for some reason, even though that's purely my thinking. It's not actually something they ever told me. And so I'm home and I'm thinking, okay, so I can't do any of these massive body prints. I can't do any of the lithographic kind of printing processes, which requires 15 to 30 kilogram limestones. So I just decided that I had to move on from that. And the core of my projects is an exploration about texture, about how the texture that surrounds us in our everyday surroundings, in our own skin, does that hold any essence? How do we associate identity to these things, to these people, through what we can feel, what is tangible through that texture? And so I decided to do small scale body prints and also do a type of monoprint with fish. And yeah, that's essentially how that worked. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a linear process. So I didn't really start with fish and then I went to body. And then, for me, printmaking is it's kind of like sketching or taking your camera out and shooting and filming. It's really a way of thinking through making and through making mistakes and, what they call the creative flow moment of being stuck in the making. And it was really interesting because I never thought I could do it. Deep down, I had this voice telling me I would never do it. And I did it. And it was really, really amazing. And I keep learning every time I do it. And yeah, I don't know. I think it was really important for me to be brave, to fail, because not all of it went well. And still, I think there's a lot that could have gone much better. But yeah, it's knowing that it's a process. And I just wanted to mention something that B pointed out earlier about having the people around you sort of as a minimal point of contact to adapt to, I think it was really important to me to find my COVID bubble. So, the kind of people that you're not really interacting with anyone else beyond that bubble. And so for me, it was really important to have that with some other of our classmates, which actually live really close by to me. And so it was we call them the Adams family house, because they're hyper creative and hyper productive when they want to be.
And they cook.
And they cook. They just did an event. You should check that out. It's called Quarentina Cooking. And honestly, it was so grounding. It was such a release. It was such a nurturing space to have. And, we helped each other with projects as well. And that made all the difference. And I am incredibly privileged and grateful, because that's how I was coping through COVID. There's a lot of different ways to do that. And for me, that was how I did that.
So from what I can tell, everyone seemed to find their own kind of like smaller community to kind of help them through this ordeal, and keep them somewhat sane during this entire period, as we still had to keep going as if nothing was happening. At least in terms of university work. So, final year's over, and we handed in. How was the hand-in, guys? What do you think? What was the hardest part about like the running up to the final hand-in? This one's for Mary Poppins.
Are you asking me?
This one, Mary Poppins. I think her mic might have had a little bit of a blip.
Okay. I think knowing that your work is done and that you need to step away and hand it over, because I could have spent months and months perfecting the placement of a specific paragraph. I could have spent ages trying to edit one tiny little thing that made me feel slightly uncomfortable, but I just had to let go and be like, you're done with it, just move on, because I would have driven myself crazy if I continued. If it had been any longer, I would have struggled.
Yeah, I mean, the deadline did get pushed back a little bit, and I think some people I think everyone signed a little bit of relief, but at the same time, some people were like, oh, I'm probably just going to mill about for another 2 weeks now and not get anything done. I'm looking at my own reflection, by the way. That was awful. I just got a call from Joel like, hey, you alive? I'm like, yeah. But yeah, so did anyone have any different experiences as well? Since you seemed like you had things a little bit more organized than I did. I can tell you that right now. It was a sprint to the end for me. I specifically with Foggy, I was up all night. I was finishing I thought one of my minor projects, and I get a call from Foggy like, hey, do you want to? Can you help me with some audio? I have some questions for you. I'm like, okay, yeah, sure. And I'm helping her, and then at the end of it, it's like, oh, thanks. I thank you for helping me. Like, okay, get this funny story, right? So, I had in my head that the final hand-in was next Wednesday, but I had a quick scroll of our Discord channel, and I saw the word Friday, and I was like, oh no, today's Thursday evening. I gotta get it done. I gotta get my minor done. So I dumped everything and rushed through my minor, and then I was like, Justin, like, yeah, it's next Friday. I'm like, what? Justin, it's next Friday.
Oh.
I'm like, oh,
thank God.
Okay. I'm gonna go to sleep.
Yeah.
That was
in all fairness, if I may interject, you may have given yourself a minor heart attack, but
So minor project heart attack, yeah?
You did well because the thing with this whole digital hand-in is that you had to kind of upload everything, and then the good plan of action was to update things as you were finishing them. And I didn't do that, and I just went the day before, and I'm like uploading stuff and creating this taxonomical system that's beautiful, and next day, and I'm like, shit, I still haven't finished this PDF. Like, why did I? So I have to say that, we all experience this whole situation of procrastination and panic and fear and loathing.
Yeah.
All right. So B, so what was it like? So how much of your project were paintings? I'm curious about this one. And how do you actually have to deal with the hand-in for that?
It was just one.
Just the one?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. That kind of throws my question out the window then. Because I know in terms of like illustration and things, they have to scan everything in and upload like that, but that'll be a lot more difficult with a painting. I mean, yes, you can record it with photography, but it's not quite the same as a digital image. But that throws my question out the window. But yeah, so how's the rush for you? Like, did you finish your film early on, or did you look back and think, oh, I need to add things to it?
I'm getting quite good at just having a plan and stick to the plan, and like just really just focus on that schedule and get those mini tasks done, and then I can sleep better. That's just how I function, really. But it was very nostalgic. The closer you got, it's like, yes, I'm finishing, I'm graduating, I'm gonna hand it in and all that. And then you think more about it, it's like, fuck, I'm not gonna go to the studio like that. I mean, we haven't been there.
We haven't been there. We're not gonna be able to celebrate together. It's not the same.
Like, fuck. Then it hits.
I kind of felt the handing was kind of lackluster, because after you hand it in, you're like, okay, cool. Now what? It's like, not the same. It's not the same as like celebrating with everyone.
Dropbox and you upload your work in process as well. But I was at the beginning of the year, I was kind of looking forward to see how everyone's were doing, like to be in the studio and to see how we're rushing around and like building things up from scratch, and like you didn't get that. But
we always hear the stories from the tutors, and I've actually experienced it firsthand of the very last day as people are rushing about trying to finish as much as they can, throwing stuff into their sketchbooks. My favorite story is someone who hadn't come in like in ages. Everyone who was done, were all in a line, just a long line, helping him finish his sketchbook. So it was like someone's like he ran down, like gave the third person at the front like a bunch of images that he had printed out at the LCC library. He ran to the end and started writing in his sketchbook as people. The first person would cut the image, give it to the next person would stick it in. Exactly. Well, we'll put glue in it. Next person will stick it down and push it to him to quickly write down something down. Right.
Sounds like a movie. I mean.
Or even okay, we're closing the door now. No one can hand anything out. Whoop, throw the laptop in.
Yeah.
That was my year, by the way. But yeah, it's not quite the same, and hopefully, if we're going to stay in contact, and once all this is over, we can go, we can go celebrate. Yeah. But of course, it's different, But what was also different, and the reason why we're here today and talking during this live event, is because the grad show was digital this year. And I think everyone has fairly strong opinions about the online grad show. But before we get into that, I just want to quickly mention to anyone watching that this is an open panel discussion panel.
Discussion.
So a discussion. I'm kind of interviewing more or less like a discussion, but we are open to questions, and then if I see some, I'll answer them. I've already seen one or two that I'm going to get to when the appropriate time comes. So throw some questions if you want to. Anyway, back to the digital showcase, which is currently happening right now. You still have a day. I think it's a day or two. It's a 1 day. I think it's the 7th it ends. To go check out. You can check out everyone here and all the projects that we were talking about earlier in those in the digital showcase. But yeah, so the process of creating a digital showcase opposed to an online a physical showcase was very different. The overall atmosphere is very different as well. Mary Poppins, how do you think the online showcase really affected like what you wanted to show?
Well, I'm thinking back to our interim showcase that we had just before Christmas. That was thrown together in the same way that this one was. No one was quite prepared for that one either.
The interim showcase is always the wake up call showcase.
Yes.
I've seen it twice. It's always a wake up call. No one is ever ready for it until someone has to step up. And I know you stepped up for that one. Or you stepped up for the online showcase, and I just existed. So going back to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think this was the best possible answer that we could have given to our situation. I know that everyone is devastated that we couldn't have our physical show, because it's not just for us, it's for our family and friends who've supported us for the last 3 years or 5 years in your case. And it was disappointing, incredibly disappointing, but I think that it's been handled as well as it possibly could have. I wasn't as involved with the running and making of a digital one, not as much as Foggy was, but I was happy with the pages that I put up, and I went through and looked at everyone else's pages, and I think that it just shows how talented we all are, and how proud we should be of being IDA students and of ourselves as well.
Yeah, it's like because I was actually referring to your online to your page when I was making mine, since because when I talked to you like over the interview about how you're going to deal with the online showcase, because yours was magazine, it's not going to be the same if it's not physical, right? I was referring to the way that you managed to work around it, and I think you did a pretty good job about that.
Thank you. I just tried to include as many PDFs of like my favorite articles as I could, and I made a few backgrounds so that if you look at the back of my my pages, you can see a lot of the spreads that were involved in the magazine that you may not necessarily see on the main pages. And at the end, I included it was sort of like a coming soon video that I made for social media, which depicted the photo shoots that I was able to conduct pre-down. And I was quite happy with how I represented my magazine and what I did. And I think it showed my personality more than anything, I guess.
All right, yeah, I think one thing we did manage to do in the showcase, which sometimes falls through in a physical show, is showing your own personality before someone looks at your work. I think B actually has a very good example of this. Like just an image, like her profile image alone just shows exactly what she's about. Like the big face, and she's painted, like it's great. Okay, so B, what do you think? What was your opinion about the way that this whole online showcase was really handled, right? So,
Well, my opinion. Well, it's great we got this opportunity despite of the situation, and I think it looks really professional and smooth, and like you can see each other's work like that with this setup. We're a bit afraid how much of our work could actually be shown PDFs, and like we will only have 5 pages, which can sound very less, but it seems like people have been able to get most of their work up, at least what they want to show.
Yeah, I think a lot of us were actually very concerned about only
Yeah.
having 5 pages and not being able to customize it that much.
Exactly.
But I think a good majority of our course managed to find workarounds to the rules
Exactly.
that were embedded.
And use it in different ways. It's funny to see how we have curated our page differently. Yeah.
I think it shows a different, like how everyone's minds work differently as well in the course. Like we're all very similar in the way we think,
Yeah.
but not very similar in the way we think as well.
Yeah.
And you can see like how people, even without kind of talking to each other, sometimes we still manage to bounce ideas off each other by kind of referring to each other's work and each other's pages. So here's something interesting. So, okay, so you have your film. Would you prefer it like if it was a physical showcase where we would have a screening room for everyone to show off their films? So you have the audience sit down and experience it, like actually being an audience of people, rather than just being by themselves, maybe on their phone or behind the screen.
Yeah. I mean, if it has been a physical show, I mean, in my film of Tokyo, it's on my trip to Tokyo, I'm playing a lot with triptychs, and that could have been really fun to play with in a space and have it around you, as in a physical space. But yeah, I mean, you cannot rest that much in the past. I mean, that's how it is now, and It worked out great. And now there's more. I mean, got great ideas for different projects, so can work out another time.
I think we've all learned a lot from this experience, just having to kind of adapt our work again, right? Yeah. So we're kind of trying to put adapted work because of COVID into this digital showcase, but because it's a digital showcase, we're having to adapt our work yet again to try and kind of go along with this. And I think we've all learned a lot from that, whether we like it or not. And then there's the old ideas of what we would have done if the showcase wasn't, if the showcase was physical, is now like kind of stored in our memories and like, oh, I really wish I could do that. And then that will find a way of manifesting itself in future projects, I think.
Yeah.
But speaking of doing things differently, Foggy, so if it was a physical show, I know that your books were texture-based.
Yeah.
How differently would it go on? So yeah, so during my interviews with Foggy, she was telling me how she really likes textures. She likes like the feel of a book sometimes, and how it can really kind of sell a narrative, just the weight of a book, and everything inside it has a lot more meaning and proverbial weight if you're actually experiencing it then and there, rather than seeing it on the screen and scrolling down, right? How would you go about changing up your books from the digital ones that you uploaded to the actual physical ones if we had the physical show?
I think that's not an easy question to answer, because from my experience looking at how publications are shown in degree shows, there's still a series of barriers that you kind of have to confront. There's the fact that maybe you have a single kind of object, or maybe you have a series of copies if you've been able to print it in a magazine kind of style. But it's always the fact that hundreds of people, if not thousands, will be touching this very delicate object. But I wouldn't know immediately how I would have confronted that. We made two versions of it. So I think I would have made it so that you had to sit down and kind of manipulate the subject and manipulate it in the kind of paused and almost performative and contemplative way that you would if you sit in your house with a photo album that your mom has dug out from your great grandmother or something like that. You know, it's this experience of being absolutely absorbed by this obviously delicate yet really expressive object. So I think that's what I would have liked, you know, just to have someone sit there and go through it, and maybe that would have been actually a really interesting kind of audience performance situation where someone is in charge of this object, someone is in charge of it, and they are carefully being sat, and then they like look through the pages and they manipulate it, they open it, they change the perspective of it. And it would be really nice to see kind of people group around this person in the same way that when you're sitting in your living room with your photo album, you suddenly have your brother come in over your shoulder, you have your mom sat next to you, kind of putting names to the people in these photos. So I think I like this idea of becoming enveloped by people while someone is flipping through these pages. But I like the idea of that person to not be me, but to be a person of the audience, so that they can transmit what they think that they should be doing to the audience. I think it's I don't know, it's that experience of witnessing something, and then it tells you immediately without any words how it is that you should be handling this object. It's like handling a newborn baby. You're not just gonna like move it around, you're just gonna like observe it and carefully manipulate it, gently pass it on to someone else. I like this kind of notion, especially because maybe it would end up being a bit damaged by the end of the exhibition, but
then it becomes an artifact, right? It becomes becomes something that's transformed throughout the entire process.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's got content that is meant to be read, and funnily enough, I think that the whole conversation and dialogue is a particular topic that we're both really interested in. For example, because the text inside the book isn't me writing a book, it's me and Celine Wolforth again having a conversation, and having a conversation about how we experienced something in the past, how we dealt with it in the present, and then how we think the material object and the material experiments collated inside the book will convey these emotions, these instances in time. So I don't know, I think it's a very emotional piece. It speaks by itself, and I would like to be able to share that with people in the near future, but well, we might have to rethink whether we're making everyone wear a hazmat suit and a mask and PPE kind of.
Gather around, children. We have a story time. Put on your hazmat suits and gloves. We're going to be reading with this very, very sterile book.
Yeah, it's definitely the same. Not sterile. We picked a lot of fabrics and plastics along the way, so there's a lot of stuff in there that is definitely not sterile. But yeah, I don't know. It's okay. I think in the graduate showcase, the digital one, I try to photograph them in a way that expressed a lot of love. So maybe it doesn't express this kind of storytelling moment, but it definitely shows the kind of affection and almost adoring hold that I have on this object, because it means a lot to me and it means a lot to my design partner Celine. So I think that comes through in the images, and I'm quite happy about that.
All right, so it seems like everyone seemed to make the most out of what we were given, right? Given the circumstances. We did get a question whether we were angry about it, about the whole digital showcase scenario. I mean, okay, you should throw this around, but I'm gonna have a stab at this one myself. I think given the situation, we couldn't really ask for much beyond a digital showcase, right? A physical showcase was completely out of the question. I am a little, peeved about the way that the digital showcase was handled, the organization of it at the very least. Even though I know a lot of people behind the scenes were working their ass off, it certainly wasn't the most, fun experience. Trying to deal with the whole uploading thing, where the site went down and you're trying to upload and it'll save once every 6 times you try, and then even then it wouldn't save, or when you're trying to upload stuff to your page and the preview only shows you the preview of the layout but not actually what's being put into the pages. That's a lot of things they could have improved on. But I think given the situation, it's a lot better than nothing. And we did make the most out of it, I think. And I'm still very happy it exists, and it's a lot easier to show people, hey, yeah, showcase. If you're curious what I've been doing for the past 5 years, here's a link. I can send it to my family as well, my friends who otherwise wouldn't be able to come down to London to actually go see the physical grad show.
That's true. It's much more accessible.
I mean, there's also the fact that I get to work with sound in this live event. The second one I've done actually helped our sister course 2 days ago, IID. But this is a different experience that wouldn't have happened outside of a digital showcase. Does anyone want to add anything about that?
I think that I came to terms with the lack of physical degree show quite early on. I sort of thought that if you can't go outside and see your family, there's no way that we're going to be able to have a digital show. And that was just something that we had to accept. But I think the saddest thing is that we won't be able to experience it all together. And as much as we have the online server, and as much as we can do FaceTime and we can have Zoom meetings and all, there's that sense of community that is lost. But the case has, I mean, I think that what was done well. There were some glitches previously mentioned, but I think it was the best that could have possibly been done with the circumstances. So
I think so as well. I think management side, the end result was pretty decent, and I'm pretty happy with the way it turned out.
You know that courses found that they weren't treated as well as we were. I mean, we have 2 incredible people heading our course, and I think that we're all incredibly thankful to both Joel and Biggles for being mentors and father-like figures, and just.
I mean, it's also for the showcase as well. We have to thank the others behind the scene. Marion being one of them. Just kind of whipping us into shape, as well as Foggy. Marion whipping Foggy to whip us into shape, which was great. And it got the job done. Let's play like that.
She's watching right now. She knows.
Oh, she knows. Fantastic.
She knows.
I mean, I was gonna say that.
Insert my. Oh God, this is so good.
Fantastic. But yeah. But no, she specifically for the live event, she did a lot to get this sorted, right?
Absolutely.
And I think this isn't the last live event. There'll be one at 5 p.m. later, where two of our guests will be along with others to talk about their relative theses, whatever. But yeah, I think we're going to move on to probably our final topic, which is going to be the future, right? So yes, we've been affected by COVID this term, and Vlahanden and the showcase, but it doesn't end there. It's essentially going to keep going, right? It's think like what we do, like what kind of jobs we do, what projects we continue to do in the future can be completely affected by COVID, and what forever going to be known as like the COVID year, the COVID graduates. Rock on. Fuck. But yeah, I think one question we got asked earlier was whether most of us or all of us managed to transition from what we did at the beginning of the course to what we eventually specialized in. And I'm gonna add to that and say whether we're gonna keep doing that in the future. So, because for example, I started with performance and sculpture, and now I do sound, almost exclusively sound. And I'm definitely going to keep doing that in the future, though I'm going to have to kind of move out of that slightly, and experiment into video editing and film as well. So Bea, are you going to keep trying the film, or are you going to keep at the painting, or a mixture of both? Because I know you had an audition earlier today.
Oh, that was for modeling. That didn't have much to do, but yeah. It's
I disagree. Since a lot of what, because your film came from, your modeling job in Tokyo.
Yeah, you're right.
So, do you have any plans to keep going with your mediums?
I mean, it's definitely provide me a lot broader perspective of my practice and how I can use these media for my work. But it's painting I go back to, but with a different mindset, a lot more expanded and provoked maybe. So yeah, I will. I mean, who knows? But I'm definitely curious to. I mean, I'm just more encouraged to try out new things now after these 3 years and just jump into it. If there's something I'm curious about, and just do it, try it, and see how it goes and see where it can bring you.
The question is, like, if we're not going to be able to go as we previously were able to, and not able to bounce ideas as easily as we used to be able to, how easily are these ideas going to come, right? That's a big question that I'm curious about, specifically for your continuation in painting. Do you think that's going to really harm it, or it's going to change the different ideas you get instead?
I mean, yeah, life goes on, but I will definitely just find new sources. My idea sources is not uniquely from the course, but they happen as life goes on, and the inputs you get from any aspect. Yeah, but motivation, that's definitely something you gotta keep up with now, because it's not easy. When everything is affected.
Okay, so Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
So I know we've talked about this, and you do want to eventually finish up more issues of your magazine. Are there any immediate plans now that there's a slight, there's a loosening of rules on lockdown? Do you have any plans to meet up with people and try and get more interviews, try and get more photo shoots done? Or is being an island with your parents going to inhibit that, because, not being more central with other people is it's a lot hard to get these things done.
It's interesting because most of the people that I actually interviewed and asked to send me portraits and stuff, they actually came from Ireland.
Oh, that works out.
People that I went to high school with, or people that I used to work with, and just, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to inhibit me just yet. I have decided that I'm going to take a little holiday, maybe for a week, and then eventually just get back on it and start either looking for jobs or helping some people out. And I don't know, I would love to have a plan. I would love to say that I have people that I can go and do photo shoots with now, but the next problem is I may have the person, but I don't actually have the equipment to do that. So there's always going to be hurdles and mountains that you got to jump and climb over, but it's just figuring out how you're going to do that. And until it's directly in front of me, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do just yet.
We actually have a question for you in the chat, and they're asking, what kind of magazine is it?
Oh, okay. So my first issue, it's called Effects Magazine, and it was originally based on the idea of the halo effect, which is where you view a famous person in a more favorable light just because they're famous and because they're beautiful and they have status and money. I took that idea and reversed it and made a magazine that focused, this particular issue focused mainly on women who are in the cusp of becoming who they're going to be just before they become who they're going to be. So my cover model was Lauren, who has literally just graduated and become an official radiographer. And I interviewed her just before she graduated. So I got to talk to her about her life and how she views body issues and how she interacts with her mum. And then I interviewed a girl I used to go to school with who is now flying around the world and going on yachts and just living her dream. So I think the whole magazine is just about people and where they are, and they may not be famous, they may not be rich or have a lot of status, but they're just who they are. And I wanted to prove that you can show and be beautiful and just live life exactly as you are.
There's, if you are curious and you want to see it, you can check out the digital showcase. The link, I've posted the link in the chat, and feel free to have a sneak peek at exactly how things were made and what they look like, because everyone's work here is amazing. All right, and Foggy, so this one's going to be interesting since predominantly printer, and without access to the facilities at LCC, how do you think you're gonna keep up your work?
Well, I mean, the good thing about growing up never knowing what I wanted to do and predominantly wanting to try every single thing under the sky is I have a few competences. I think it's easy to say that I'm mainly a printmaker because I think that the work is quite visible. Fish Girl is clearly catchy, so there. But
oh, you're the Fish Girl. I love it.
Oh God, don't. I'm telling you, this course with yet another nickname. So what I want to try and say with this is that I can continue to print the same way that I have been, despite quarantine, despite not having access to the facilities. That's really not a problem. And I will get back into that printing room, mark my words, whether it's at LCC with their plan to celebrate and promote graduates who were at a very difficult time in their last year, and hopefully they'll give us access to the first term to the facilities. But it doesn't really mean that that's the end of my kind of employability. You know, at the moment, I'm currently doing a role as a project manager. I'm working actually alongside LCC at the moment for the London Design Festival coming up. So, you know, it's been really wonderful because it means that I can work from my mom's house. I'm very happy that I can be with my brother and my mother and this wonderful and charming son. So I think I'm very positive about the outlook going forward. It means that I will definitely have to do a lot of learning as I'm doing, and there'll be a lot of. It means that I can work from my mom's house. I'm very happy that I can be with my brother and my mother, and
Jess, MP.
Wonderful and charming.
Swap back to Zoom.
Very positive. That was some creepy ghost.
Some
feedback.
ghosty effects.
No worries. So yeah, just to keep it short, I'm very lucky that the initial heartache that I had, not knowing where to specialize or what to focus on, has actually allowed me to be more free flowing and allowed me to adapt to, you know, project management, to do curation, to do art direction. And yeah, hopefully when everything kind of settles down, I can go back to LCC and start curating more, start doing more kind of directing and more printmaking. But I'm not, you know, I'm not afraid of trying out different things work-wise. So I just need to be consistent and, like V said, try and keep that motivation up, which I think is the hardest part.
I think keeping motivation up after all of this, after you're getting so used to interacting with everyone for such a long time, is going to be probably one of the toughest things.
Yeah.
And sometimes, especially now with, you know, with like jobs not being as available and, you know, everything that's happening, it's going to be a lot harder to throw yourself straight back into working. But I think we're going to start wrapping up very soon. But if you guys remember, I mentioned this earlier on in the event that during these interviews, I'd like to throw a curveball. Right. So with knowledge that these videos will be up for a while, and that there are people watching, specifically people that we know, who is your favorite tutor? I'm going to start with Foggy because she's flustered.
Justin, what is that? What is this question?
Can't ask that.
Yeah. You're my least favorite person now.
You're welcome.
Oh my god.
No, honestly, in reality, I just really wanted to see your reactions to that. I'm not actually going to ask you that. Because honestly, I just couldn't get enough of seeing the reactions when you guys had to try and describe interaction, IDA, and
I was nuts.
I would like to say one thing. We can't possibly pick one favorite tutor because they complement each other. They're essentially like having. Okay, I'm gonna rephrase what I was about to say. So for most of us, we aren't English. We're living in a city that is new or isn't new necessarily, but it's not our home. And we're having to do all of these adult things on our own and so on and so on. So Biggles and Joel are essentially our foster parents and our tutors.
Yeah.
So there's no way I can say who we love more because they're equally important. And I think they actually have their strengths and they're kind of, they complement each other so well how they work. And they're like, okay, I can't deal with this person anymore. Tag, you're it, you know, go deal with this crazy student or with this crazy project. So I don't know. I just have a love for both of them.
I was going to say, yeah, I think we all share the same sentiment that you can't possibly pick a favorite. They've all been such a significant part of our lives the past few years and helps us through everything. And not just those two, like people in the background. So, you know, Marion, so
Yeah.
when I was there, Tobias as well, Nicholas, and then even some of the graduates, some of the old graduates that work in tech, you know, Tommaso and all the others. So right, it's once part of IDA, you're always part of a big, expansive family, whether you like it or not, right? But yeah, so I think it's probably time to start wrapping up. So I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in to this, and make sure you catch the thesis talks at 5 p.m. Well, I think it's a bye from all of us.
Oh my God, my heart.
Oh God, that was so. God, that was so sentimental. But yeah. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thank you so much, Justin.
Thank you for having us.